November 20th, 2014, from the Coliseum in Oakland, California. It was the Kansas City Chiefs at the Oakland Raiders on Thursday Night Football. The Raiders won the toss and they elected to defer, so the Chiefs would start out with the ball first. They would go 3 and out on their first possession. And the Raiders took over on their own 15 with about 13.5 minutes left in the first. But after 6 plays, they punted the ball, and the Chiefs would take over for the second time in this game, and they would go 3 and out for the second consecutive possession in the first quarter. So now Oakland would take over on their own 40-yard line with about 10 minutes left in the first. And they got into Kansas City territory. They got all the way down into the red zone after a 3rd and 4 from the 21 when Derek Carr hit Butler for a 10-yard pass to make it a first down on the Kansas City 11. Then Latavius Murray took it in from 11 yards out for a touchdown, and it was now 7-0 Oakland over Kansas City. So now the Chiefs would take over with about 6.5 minutes left in the first. They had the ball on their own 14-yard line. Then on 2nd and 8 from the 16, Jamaal Charles ran for 11 yards to bring it out to the 27. They'd pick up another first down, but then their drive would stall on the 47, and they would end up punting the ball back to the Raiders. So now Oakland would take over with about 2.5 minutes left in the first, and they would go 3 and out for the first time in this game. They punted it back to Kansas City. So now the Chiefs had the ball on their own 33 with a little less than 2 minutes left in the first. And they would end up bringing the first quarter to a close when Alex Smith hit D'Anthony Thomas for a 10-yard pass on 2nd and 7 from the Oakland 44 to pick up a first down on the Oakland 34. But after 1 quarter of play, the score was Raiders 7, Chiefs 0. So to open things up in the second quarter, the Chiefs had the ball on the Raiders 34. And they ended up being faced with a 1st and 20 after picking up a penalty on first down. And it was 1st and 20 from the 44. Smith then hit Kelsey for an 8-yard pass, but on 2nd and 12, Smith went to Charles and he was dropped for a 12-yard loss. So that would bring up 3rd and 24, and a false start would make it 3rd and 29, and they would end up punting the ball from their own 47. So now Oakland would take over on their own 10-yard line with less than 13 minutes left before halftime. And on the first play of this possession, Latavius Murray took it 90 yards all the way for the touchdown to make it 14-0 Oakland over Kansas City. So now the Chiefs would take over with about 12.5 minutes left in the second quarter. They had the ball on their own 20, but after 8 plays, they would punt the ball. But on the punt, there was a fumble by Moore, and it ended up being recovered by Zombo. So the Chiefs would end up with the ball on the Oakland 11, but they wouldn't end up getting into the end zone, and they would end up having to settle for a 24-yard field goal as Cairo Santos came out to kick it. It was up, it was good, and the Chiefs were finally on the scoreboard with the score now Oakland 14, Kansas City 3. So now the Raiders would take over on their own 15 with a little over 7 minutes left in the second quarter. But after 6 plays, they would punt the ball to Kansas City. So now the Chiefs would take over on their own 5-yard line in the shadow of their own end zone. They ended up with a 4th and 3 actually from the 12, but a penalty of running into the kicker gave them a first down, but they wouldn't pick up another first down, and they would end up having to punt the ball from their own 25. So now the Raiders would take over. There was less than a minute, about half a minute left before halftime. They didn't end up picking up a first down. They ended up getting a penalty of holding on first down. That made it 1st and 20. And after a 2-yard pass, they ended up going for a run that brought the first half to a close. So going into the locker rooms at halftime, the score was Oakland 14, Kansas City 3. So now the Raiders would end up opening up the second half with the ball. They had it on their own 12-yard line, but after 6 plays, they would have to punt it to the Chiefs. So now the Chiefs took over with about 12.5 minutes left in the third. They had the ball on their own 10. They would end up punting it 5 plays later from the 14. So now the Raiders got the ball back with less than 10 minutes left in the third. They had it at midfield on the Kansas City 49. They were then faced with a 3rd and 1 from the 40, and Carr hit Jones for a 2-yard pass that picked up the first down. Then on 2nd and 4 from the 32, McFadden ran for 7 yards, and that picked up another first down. But on 3rd and 7 from the 22, an incomplete pass would bring out Sebastian Janikowski to attempt a 40-yard field goal. It was up and it was good, and it was now 17-3 Raiders over the Chiefs as they extended their lead to 2 touchdowns. So now the Chiefs would take over with about 5 minutes left in the third quarter. They had the ball on the 40 after a nice return by Niall Davis on the kickoff. He returned it 46 yards. And so now on first down, Smith would hit Bo for an 11-yard pass, and then that would make it a first down on the 49 of Oakland, and Smith would hit Kelsey for a 21-yard pass that would make it a first down on the 28 of Oakland. They were then faced with a 2nd and 12 from the 30, and Smith went back to Kelsey, this time for an 11-yard pass. And then they were faced with 3rd and 1 from the 19 as they were now in the red zone, and Smith went to Anthony Fasano, and he dove for the end zone, and it was a touchdown, a 19-yard touchdown pass. It ended up being reviewed, and the ruling was upheld, and it was now 17-10 as the Chiefs had cut the Raiders' lead to just 7. So now Oakland would take over with less than 2 minutes left in the third quarter. They'd have the ball on their own 20. They'd end up being faced with a 2nd and 20 after a holding penalty on first down. And then on 2nd and 20 from the 10, Derek Carr dropped back to pass, and he hit Andre Holmes for a 37-yard reception that made a first down on the 47. They then lost 5 yards on a run by McFadden, and that brought the third quarter to a close. So after 3 quarters of play, the score was Oakland 17, Kansas City 10. So now to open things up in the fourth quarter, the Raiders had the ball on their own 42. It was 2nd and 15. And they ended up having to punt the ball a couple plays later as they did not make a first down. So now the Chiefs would take over with about 14.5 minutes left in this game. They had the ball on their own 35, and Alex Smith went to Kelsey. He hit him for a 27-yard pass that made it a first down on the Oakland 38. They then ended up losing 10 yards on a penalty of holding against the offense, and so now it would be 1st and 20 from the Oakland 48, and Smith then went to Bo for a 24-yard pass that made it a first down on the Oakland 24. They were then ended up being faced with a 2nd and 16 from the 30 after another penalty. And on 2nd and 16, Alex Smith hit Jamaal Charles, and he dinked and he dunked and he made some moves. He avoided some tackles, and he ended up getting into the end zone for the 30-yard touchdown. It was an amazing run. Got to check out those highlights to catch that one. And that made it a tie game at 17 apiece. So now with about 12.5 minutes left in this game, the Raiders would take over on their own 17, but they would go 3 and out and punt the ball right back to Kansas City, who now took over on the Oakland 37 with about 11 minutes left in this game. They would end up getting into the red zone, but their drive stalled on the 7-yard line, and Cairo Santos would come out to attempt a 25-yarder, and it was up and it was good, and it was now 20-17 as the Chiefs took the lead for the first time in this game here in the fourth quarter. So now the Raiders would take over with about 9 minutes left on the clock. They had the ball on their own 20. Marcel Reese ran for 9 yards on first down, and then he ran for another 7 yards on 2nd and 1 from the 29. They made it a first down on the Oakland 36. Derek Carr then threw a pass to Marcel Reese, and that picked up 8 yards to make it 2nd and 2 on the 44. Marcel Reese then ran for 4 yards, as it was all Marcel Reese at this point, and it was now a first down on the Oakland 48. Derek Carr was then sacked for a 2-yard loss by Justin Houston. I believe that's Houston's 13th sack of the year. It was now 2nd and 12 from the 46 of Oakland for the Raiders. Derek Carr dropped back to pass, and he found Butler for an 11-yard reception that made it 3rd and 1 from the Kansas City 43. An incomplete pass would make a timeout for the Chiefs, and it was now 4th and 1 on the 43 for the Raiders. They elected to go for it, and Derek Carr went for the quarterback sneak, and he picked up the first down. So now it was 1st and 10 on the 42 for the Raiders on the Kansas City 42, and they went to Marcel Reese, who ran for 4 yards to make it 2nd and 6, and an incomplete pass brought 3rd down. Derek Carr dropped back to pass, and he hit Michael Rivera for an 8-yard pass that made it a first down on the Kansas City 30. An incomplete pass brought up second down, and Marcel Reese ran for 1 yard, and now it was 3rd and 9 on the 29. An incomplete pass, but defensive pass interference on the play, and it was now a first down on the 20. Marcel Reese ran for 5 yards, and that brought us to the 2-minute warning. And it was now 2nd and 5 on the Kansas City 15 for the Raiders. Reese then ran for 4 yards, and the Chiefs took their second timeout. It was now 3rd and 1 from the 11. Derek Carr ended up running for 2 yards, and now the Chiefs took their last timeout, and it was 1st and goal on the 9. Derek Carr dropped back to pass, and he had James Jones for the 9-yard touchdown to give the Raiders back the lead with the score now Oakland 24, Kansas City 20. So now Kansas City would take over with about a minute and a half left on the clock. They had the ball on their own 39 after a 48-yard return by DeAnthony Thomas. They ended up being faced with a 3rd and 3 from the 46, and Alex Smith threw an incomplete pass, and that would bring up 4th and 3. There was another incomplete pass, but ended up being defensive holding, and that would make it a first down on the Oakland 49. So they stayed alive. Alex Smith then hit Jamaal Charles, but it was only for 4 yards, and then an incomplete pass would bring up 3rd and 6 from the Oakland 45, but on 3rd and 6 from the 45, Alex Smith dropped back to pass, and he was sacked for a 7-yard loss by Moore. The Raiders were celebrating, and then the Chiefs were rushing up to the line, and it looked like it was going to be a penalty. They hiked the ball. Flags flew everywhere as the Raiders were on the wrong side of the line, but they had called a timeout, and so there was no penalty. And with the timeout by the Raiders, now it was 4th and 13 for Kansas City on their own 48. Their last chance, Alex Smith dropped back, and he ended up throwing an incomplete pass that turned the ball over on downs. And the Raiders had nothing left to do but take a knee, and this game came to a close as the Oakland Raiders win their first game of 2014 with the final score 24-20. So with the victory, the Raiders are now 1-10 on the season, 1-5 at home as they finally win a game. They beat their AFC West Division rivals, the Chiefs, who are now 7-4. They fall to second place in the division. They're 3-3 on the road. And in this game, Derek Carr was 18 for 35 with 174 passing yards and a touchdown. He also had 2 yards rushing off of 3 carries. Alex Smith was 20 for 36 with 234 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 5 yards off of 2 carries. The leading rusher in this game was Latavius Murray. Even though he was injured in the second quarter, he had 112 yards off of just 4 carries, 2 of which were for touchdowns. Jamaal Charles had 19 carries for 80 yards on the ground. He also had 42 yards off of 4 receptions, including a touchdown reception. That was that 30-yard catch, and then he ran for it. Fasano also caught a touchdown. He had 2 receptions for 30 yards. The leading receiver was actually Kelsey, who had 4 receptions for 67 yards. But the Raiders end up winning this one, and in large part, that was due to their defense, and Sio Moore had 12 tackles in this game, including a sack and 2 tackles for losses. He was the game's leading tackler. Josh Moga was the leading tackler for the Chiefs with 10 tackles. The Chiefs had 1 sack. That was Justin Houston. The Raiders had 2. The other sack that they had went to Charles Woodson, who had 8 tackles in this game. So the Raiders win in impressive fashion on Thursday Night Football in prime time. They pick up their first win of the season over the Chiefs, and the final score, Oakland 24, Kansas City 20.